going. So you had
All
left
right,
off.
we're going.
What like senior year of high school. And
Well, I think I was
moving on.
talking about, since I recalled that last session about talking about basketball and Father Crick. I think the reason I mentioned that because that's the first time I ever went out to eat in a restaurant, as my father and mother never did.
They never ever
Never took us out.
And
Never.
You think it's because they were frugal?
Yes. Just come, they got married during the Depression, 1933.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in 34. Things were tough and hard, and everybody sharing houses and all that. And I think it was just ingrained in them. Money was such a vital thing. We never went out.
Well, what did they do to pass the time then? Like when you were a teenager, like with the
Well, the Olanders were big in cards.
Oh, really?
Because when you guys the other night were playing pinochle, I thought of them. My Uncle Chet, my dad, Gus, my Grandpa Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
big pinochle players. And on Sundays they'd get together, and me and my brother would sit out there, and they'd give us Kool-Aid and popcorn or something. But those
Were
guys,
they drinkers? It was your family partiers or drinkers?
They weren't really big parties, but when they did party, it was a little bit too much, I thought.
What do you mean?
Well, my Uncle Chet and my dad were big brothers. They were brothers and they were close. And they're probably, 4 years apart, age-wise. My dad was the older. And when they get going, like at a wedding or a family get-together, those guys drink that beer and shot of Corby's or Seagram's, cheap whiskey, I remember.
Yeah.
Corby's, I don't even think they make it anymore.
I've never heard of it.
No, but it's back in the 40s, 50s.
So they liked to party when they got...
Well, they didn't want to stop, and I think that's why I'm always on guard, not to get drunk.
I know, I've noticed that about you.
Yes, I am. Well,
Even in high school?
I lost my father.
Yeah.
When I was a policeman. I can't remember when he passed away, 70s? He was 61 years old, had another year to work, and his brother, Chester's, one of his sons got married in Trenton. They had the party at the KC Hall. I worked afternoons that day. And I had dinner with, Grandma, my wife, and the 3 kids. Because your mom remembers dancing with my dad at this kind of a Polish wedding. Well, I saw him there shortly, I just had dinner and I had to go back to work. I only had a half hour off. So when I left, it was okay. But I heard later on that him and his brother Chet were doing shots and dancing and having a good time. And that's what I heard later, because when I was there, it was
Low key?
Yeah, it was supper time, basically. It was low key, they were drinking that, but nothing big. But then I remember that night, I came home and about midnight the phone rings. And one of my lieutenants called me, he says, hey, hate to tell you this, but your dad was in a one-car accident. He's at Seaway, you might want to go see him. Okay. So I told my wife, my dad got hurt in a car wreck. I'm going to go see how bad he is. So, dressed up, went back to Seaway, and, he was at the table, my doctor was checking him, signs, everything. He was disorientated, I thought, and I could smell
What was on him? Oh, yeah.
like 3 feet away, and that's a bad sign. So, they gave him a bunch of antibiotics and x-rays, and a day and a half later, he passed away.
From what? What was the cause?
Peritonitis poisoning. When that happened, he was in his pickup truck, which he shouldn't have been, because he had a package. And he took the back road from the KC Hall which was at the south side of Trent. And he came up to a stop sign and he had to make a left. Well, the road at this time was called Van Horn Road. And it was a divided median. You know, like there was a median in between. You had the eastbound and the westbound Van Horn going. He wanted to go westbound, get back to Taylor where he lived. Well, with his bad eyesight and the booze, he cut his left turn too short. And his pickup truck went down like a little dip. And the frame, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Base frame caught the rail. And the witness said he must have been about 20 miles an hour. Because he hesitated, but didn't come to a full stop because he had a witness. And then he shot out while he cut too soon, screwed himself up.
See, that's why. But you don't remember, and so that freaked you out about drinking. But you don't.
Yes,
you don't
that's
remember
stuck in
your
my mind.
Yeah, you don't remember your family. Like that. You know, how do they pass the time? So if it wasn't like your mom or dad on
Well,
the evenings, like
Sundays, my dad worked shift work, something like I did. He worked shift work for years. And if he was on off or day shift on a Sunday, we would automatically go visiting. Now, once in a while, he'd take my brother Ed and I to a show. He liked Cowboy, Tom Mix and Gene Autry, way back, Westerns. And he would take us, Ed and I, and him to show. My mother never went.
Oh, really? Never.
I don't remember my mother ever going to a show.
Or going out? Was she just? She didn't.
She was kind of a introvert, I thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Good lady and everything,
But not even
didn't
just stuff
like
like
to mix with
yeah, not even the stuff like that with you.
No.
Yeah.
no. But on Sundays, we always made it a point because there was not much going other than a movie theater and a radio. Back then, there was no TV in the 40s.
Right.
Every Sunday, if he was available, not working, we'd go visit one of the relatives.
Okay.
Either Cebula's or his side, Olanders. Now, Cebula's, they had a few more bucks. They were more, I don't know how you would say it, because both my two grandpas, my grandpa, Cebula, was a tester for Wynot Chemicals. My grandpa, Olander, was a warehouseman for Great Lakes Steel, where my dad worked. And so did Chester. I had about 5 Olanders work for
Great Lakes Steel.
Yeah, Great Lakes Steel in Ecorse, Michigan. And I know the steel workers made more than the Wynot Chemical worker, which was my Stanley Cebula, which was my grandpa. But as I got older, I realized, as a teenager, like 8th grade, it dawned on me that, hey, Cebula's lived a little higher the hog, better house, nicer.
Do you remember that though as a teenager?
Yeah,
you were like noticed.
I was in 8th grade.
Yeah, you noticed it.
Because shortly after that, my grandpa keeled over and died, Cebula, at 55, I think.
So you were a teenager when that happened.
Yeah, I was an 8th grader when he passed away, and it would just shock the whole family. But and Olanders didn't have a lot of possessions. They're always renting, and just one of those things.
Just kind of poor class, right?
Yeah. They started both poor, but like I say, as time went on, Cebula's eventually bought property, and they had a few bucks and lived better than the Olanders. The Olanders never had a car. He always took the bus to work. Of course, I should say too that Cebula's lived like on the western edge of Wyandotte, where the Olanders lived in a Polish area, strictly Polish, Catholic, and it was called Ford, F-O-R-D, Ford City.
Okay.
Why? I don't know. To this day, I don't know for sure. I think it's kind of the road that went through was Ford Avenue, named after Henry Ford, but Ford. the area of Ford was noted for Polish people, you know, but
And
they
the
were closer to work.
And the Cebulos did not live. They lived in a diverse place.
They lived like on the edge of town, basically. But I'm in town, but you know, big house, but on the edge of town. They were on Oak Street, probably 3 miles further out than Olanders were. Olanders were closer to the steel mills, you know, chemical plants. My dad had like 3 chemical plants when I was a kid, and my grandpa Cebula worked at one of them. He died there at work.
Oh, he died at work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was 8th grade then. But anyway, I do remember basketball, going out to the Sibley Gardens. In fact, you've been there with your family.
Yeah, yeah.
Because your grandpa Crimmins loved Sibley Gardens. They were noted for their Sibley burger.
So, that was a place when you were a young person. So that place has been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we were there when they first, I think it was new when we first, you know, opened up. Not they opened up. We were new for the basketball team to go there because we won this tournament. And nobody thought the Polish boys from Wyandotte could beat anybody.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so were there rival high schools then? Like, do you remember?
A little bit.
Like you said, you played football.
No fights. But
No fights.
Yeah, I played basketball and football for 3 years. But our rival was St. Patrick.
Another Catholic high school.
And they were across the tracks, closer to downtown.
Okay.
And Mount Carmel was on the other side of the tracks. You know, it was kind of a rivalry.
Oh yeah.
between
Okay. Interesting.
Irish
Cool.
and Polish.
Yeah.
So
That was predominantly what Wyandotte was, Irish and Polish.
predominantly,
Back then?
yep. And some English, but that's what it was, Irish and Polish.
Do you remember your parents like having bad opinions about the Irish or ever
No.
saying, "Oh no,
No,
it
I
was
never heard that in my family. Like I told you,
Yeah.
when I was in police school, where this one lady, black lady from RNA, Republic National Africa, she was trying to tell us that, you know, we had to hear something in our houses about against the black people. I never heard of that. They mind their own business. These Polish people.
So you don't remember when you were growing up ever your parents talked against anybody, black people,
No.
never, no prejudice.
No.
You said.
No prejudice. I've never heard it. And I was the oldest of like 13
Yeah.
grandkids, and I knew my grandparents better than the other 10, 11, except for Ed. Ed was the second one.
And
Yeah.
what was your image then of Detroit when you were growing up? Was it like, oh, that's the big
Detroit
city?
was-
Like when you were a
it was a big
teenager,
city.
you were like, oh, big city.
Yeah, because Cebulas had must have been a cousin. And I'd never met the people. I remember the name for some reason. Their name was Sapielak in Polish. Sapielak. Sapielak. Somehow they were related to the Cebulas. And we'd go visit them once, not year after year, but there were several times I remember we'd go there, and then my brother and I were, told to sit on the porch, and they went and visited for an hour and drove back home. But back then, Detroit was decent. It had great bakeries, Polish bakery, German bakery, Irish bakery.
Did your family ever go down there for like fun?
Yeah.
Just to,
I'd say about twice a year. We'd go in the car with my dad, and he would go down and buy, kielbasa, kiszka, and Polish pumpernickel, and,
Yeah.
a bunch of stuff.
So then,
But that was in the 40s, so you figure things were good back then.
right. So then high school. I'm curious about so it was a small high school. So was there like big cliques of friends that you had growing up?
I didn't have a lot because number one, I lived about 10 miles west of town. I lived up in the country back then. Now it's built up, but back when I was in the 40s, when I was a kid, my grandpa had bought 40 acres. Cebula had bought 40 acres of land, and he gave each of his kid 2 acres for a wedding gift.
Right. You mentioned that in a previous video.
Yeah. Anyway, so I grew up out there because my mother and dad were the only ones that built up on their 2 acres.
Yeah.
The other boys and my Aunt Lillian,
So
my mom's sister, never built there.
and that prevented you from So in high school, did you have a group of guys you hung out with? Or
Well,
was it?
I didn't know anybody, close until I was a sophomore, and a couple of my buddies talked me going out for the football team.
So that's
which was
really how
like
you first made.
September.
That's how you first made friends.
Yeah. Up to then, I didn't know, anybody.
Yeah.
My brother and I lived out in the country, and the kids.
Did you stick together then in high school? Like when you were a sophomore, were you and Ed? When you were a junior?
Ed and I were there. Even back then, weren't real close.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because he didn't play sports, so he was. What was he? A junior, maybe. He went out for football. He didn't play nothing else but football, and then he had an argument with the coach and quit. Made my dad madder than hell. But Ed was a lot like my dad. He had a short fuse, and just.
Do you remember your dad being like,
Well, I remember
like was he
him,
a rough guy? Was he an aggressive guy?
Yeah, no, he was not aggressive, but I would say he had he lacked patience. Number one, once he told you something, he'd expect you to catch on right now. And if you didn't, then you
Begin an earful.
Well, I get scared. I got scared because I was maybe I remember I had to be maybe 13 years old. He wanted me. We had a big farm, big vegetable farm, and he wanted me to drive the tractor. While he was holding what they call what you call that? I think it was a plow, a small plow that in between the row of plants, to keep it from weeding up. You drive the tractor on two sides of the plants, and then in the middle, he had a cable with a plow, and he would plow that dirt up, turn it over, kill the weeds. And I remember a couple of times, where I would goof up and went too close to a plant or didn't turn properly, he'd yell at me.
Was it a bad yell? What did you feel?
No, just, he was frustrated, angry because I screwed up, But he didn't stop to think that I didn't do it intentionally.
Right.
I mean, you get, 13-year-old kid driving a big tractor.
They're
done
going
it
to screw
before.
up, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think that was just...
But he was a good guy. I mean, he believed in church, typical Catholic guy. And both families were religious, Cebulas and Olanders. Cebulas belonged to Mount Carmel, where I and my wife, Pat, Missouri, graduated from. The other family went to a Polish church called St. Stanislaw. And but everybody.
But you think that was a part of it? Like that was important to your mom and dad, the church?
Oh yeah, they were brought up that way. Yeah, oh yeah. Sunday, no stores were open back when I was a kid. On Sunday, the only stores open was a drugstore. Nothing else. Oh, the movie theaters. Back then in Wyandotte, they had a bus running.
But everything else was
half hour.
Yeah.
Everything was quiet. It was, like family day, church, and getting together. That's why every Sunday when he was off, my dad was off, because my mother never drove, never learned to drive. I'm not sure about Pat's mom. I thought she drove. Yeah,
I feel like she did.
Yeah, she had a driver's license. My mother never did. But anyway, every Sunday,
Sundays,
like I told you, we visited family, either Olanders or Cebulas, and had dinner with them. Then we all go home because Monday it was, school day.
Mm-hmm. So Sundays were the big days off.
Yeah, it was a big day off.
And church was the thing.
And then as I got older, they trusted me and, to go to movies without them.
As you were in high school, you're saying?
Yeah, in high school. Yeah, that was big then. Wyandotte had a big theater and showed, good movies.
So they sold the livestock. Your grandfather sold livestock.
Yeah, but once he passed away in the 8th grade, which is, I don't know what, 1949, something like that. My grandmother went into deep depression. You know, the farm didn't mean anything to her anymore. And my dad worked shift work. He couldn't handle, feeding the cows and pigs and chickens, because they made money that way.
You did so your dad worked. Did your dad always work
In a steel mill. Ever since he was 17, he worked in a steel mill.
But then he did farming stuff on the side in the summer.
Just to help school us out. See?
Oh,
Really? There was
really?
40 acres. Well, part of that 40, they kept for the farm. Where they had, a barn and a hay loft, and he used to grow his own hay. He only give 5 kids 2 acres. So 2 times 5 is 10 acres. He kept the other 30 for a farm where he grew alfalfa hay, in his garden. He had a big garden too.
I didn't realize your parents were like kind of working with the Sabula side.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's the connection.
That's a connection because when Sabulas bought that property, I told you they gave each kid 2 acres. And my mother and dad were the only ones that built on that 2 acres. The other 3 brothers and her 1 sister would come out there and put a couple of fruit trees, but they
didn't man the farm or anything. Oh, wow.
Okay. Well, I shouldn't say no because the youngest one, Vic Sabula, my cousin John's dad, Vic Sabula ran the farm, plus working in Wyandotte when he come out of the Navy. He was working the farm, but then when his dad died, he couldn't keep it up either.
Mm-hmm.
So they wound up getting rid of everything, and nature took over, and all the grass and all the buildings were just covered with plants, and that just went to hell.
On the count of your
My
grandfather's
dad,
stuff? Yeah.
He was a leader. As long as he was alive, it was prosperous. Because they didn't live there. Remember, they were 10 miles away in the city, in a farm. Those animals are alive. They needed, straw,
attention
hay,
all the time. Yeah.
always food. You had to mix up a batch of I don't know what it was. How the pigs liked it. It was like a bunch of grain. Onions, not onions. They don't eat onions. It was corn and some kind of millet and oats. They'd grind it up like a powder type of thing. And then you'd mix that with water and put it in the trough.
Like a slop.
Yeah, like a slop. They would eat that. Plus, Sabulas, when Vic was helping his dad, my grandpa, Sabula, out with the farm, he knew a couple of those stores had, lettuce, thrown away, trim lettuce.
Yeah.
Vegetables, stuff that wouldn't sell.
Mm-hmm.
They'd throw them in boxes, and my Uncle Vic would go behind the store with permission, pick the boxes up, and it was great pig food.
And then mixed it with the pig stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
they loved it.
Oh,
Yeah. They did that for several years.
So that's okay. It wasn't just you helping out in the field. It was also like
I
livestock stuff too.
didn't help out that much.
Oh,
I just did. We had to. In the summer, we had to carry water for the tomatoes because it was dry, and the well that my grandpa put in was no good. You spend like $400 and come out sulfur water.
oh. So that was a risk though back then.
Yeah, you did no guarantee. We'll drill a well, Miss Sabula, we'll drill it for you. There's no guarantee. Well, you hit bad water, sulfur from the natural from the ground.
Right. Yeah. It's
Unbelievable.
Just, yeah.
So they had to carry fresh water. Well, back then,
Where'd you get the water from?
well, the county had 2 stations in Taylor because
I think you
country,
were saying this. Yes.
and there was no running water back then. They had to carry it in we call them milk jugs. Well, they were heavy as hell. I don't know what they were about. This big metal, I don't know if it was stainless or not. Maybe not. Maybe it was galvanized, but it was metal. I remember with 2 handles on the side, with a big top. You take that top off, and we go to the county building, and they had a hose there with all the water you wanted for the people that couldn't, that lived in the city.
So
had water, but we did
unlimited water.
unlimited water, but you had to carry it, He'd have like 4 or 5 of these big jugs. And we'd use that water to bathe and to, eat and all that. Soup, we had a lot of soups.
I didn't realize it was for everything too. No running water at your house.
Not back there.
So when
Not until I got in high school did they have running water. Then I could shower there and bathe.
was that a big deal?
Yeah.
When
Yeah, because you get a young man and you start liking a girl and you don't want to
be
smell
stinking,
from
yeah.
BO. So we take what they call sponge bath. Your armpits and your crotch, and your toes and all.
Yeah.
In a big pan,
And that was it. That was your
That's how we
yeah. That's how you did it.
maintain ourselves.
So when you got the running water, it was like
But then all of a sudden, Taylor Township, where my dad lives, said, "Hey, we got water coming in there." That only cost you like $90 or $80 for us to bring it to your house. Then you need a plumber to do all the plumbing. Which
so was
you did.
that you remember your parents being like, "Yes, we're doing that." Like,
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah. That was it's like electricity, just a godsend.
When did you always have electricity back then?
We had electricity, but no water, no running water,
So
no flush toilets.
You had an outhouse.
You get a pail of water and flush your toilet. Terrible.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
It
That's
was
rough living.
that bad.
Yeah, that's rough living.
Some people in Alaska, how they live.
Yeah.
You watch Alaska in those cabins. They got an outhouse in bear country. It's crazy. Now, there's one guy I watched in Alaska. He finally got smart. He built a decent cabin because his wife was.
No, Alaska. This is an
Okay.
interview.
Yeah, let's do this. Anyway, going back to my
So
life.
that was like the luxury though. Like you started when you were in high school. These luxuries, luxuries.
Before I graduated,
Yeah.
I'd say halfway through, because I went 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. About halfway in 11th grade, they brought water in to our house. And then we had regular flush toilets, we had regular showers, bathtub, the whole works.
And what was like going to the doctor, going to the dentist?
Not often.
Wow.
That's why I lost 2 front teeth. Cavities. Couldn't save them.
It just wasn't. It
Because
wasn't.
it wasn't. That's why your
part of the
parents,
living. Yeah.
your parents are so important to you as a kid to teach you. My parents never brushed their teeth.
Wow.
I never brushed my teeth until I got in high school.
Wow.
So you can imagine the mouth, and then you're talking to a girl that you like, and you feel so, self-conscious because your parents never taught us that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
Wow. It's really just hit me. That is
yeah.
rough living too.
Yeah.
Not having.
So when I got in high
parents,
school, I wanted to get my own car. I had to get a job. My first job was in a small plant on the outskirts of Detroit that made small rubber washers and grommets. Those things, soft
Mhm.
rubber.
Yeah.
He'd get the raw product, and then he would have a press and, make these things. And that was my first job. I don't know what it was. I got $600 a month, something
So
like that.
caddy. To what was your other job?
Another job was in the store as a senior.
And then after the next job was
then that next year after my job at the store, I quit because I was graduated.
Mhm.
I wanted more money, more hours. So I took a job in an office.
Oh, you said the press plant thing. That was.
Well, that's right. That's what I worked in the office, but behind the office
Oh, okay.
was a big metal building where they had these big presses, and they would make these rubber grommets, rubber washers.
Gotcha.
Then he'd ship it all out, and I would sometimes work on cutting labels to this and that. And I did that for about a year. Then 1954, Pat was still in school, and I didn't see her that
Yeah, how
much.
was that relationship when you were like? So
I
you
don't
were a
know.
senior. It was
I
your
know.
year after.
Well, I dated her that summer 2 or 3 times. Because she was young and she had a lot of boys hitting on her. She was good looking, and great figure and just a beautiful person, you know. She had all kind of guys asking her out. So, and then in the meantime, I dated several girls after, 1954 when she was in school. I didn't see her.
You dated girls after you graduated and just kind of
Not many, probably I'd say 3 or 4. And then somehow, in 55, after she graduated, I saw her at a friend's wedding in Wyandotte, and we got talking. I said, "Gee, how you doing?" Good. I said, just idle talk. I said, "Hey, by the way, I just still felt attraction to her in 55. I said, "Would you go to a show with me next Saturday?" She said, "Yeah, I think so." So one thing led to another, and we started dating.
And she was that was when you started dating again, was when she was a senior, you said?
When she was a senior, she had graduated.
And you met
I met her again at this wedding, probably it was either June or July, because we always graduated like June the 10th,
Okay.
June 9th. And she's already out of school, and she signed up for beauty school at that time, because when I went out with her, she told me that, I said, "You going to college?" She says, "No, I'm going to beauty school in Detroit."
Oh, and did she actually go to beauty school?
Oh, yeah, she was good. She had a good job, and
was that
getting serious.
Was that weird for during the times with women working like that? I mean,
no, not
it
really.
wasn't. I didn't know if you were like.
Women didn't work in factory jobs. Now, my mother never worked other than when she was a teenager, doing housework for a rich family in Wyandotte. But her mother went to work making airplanes.
Nona,
yeah. Her and a couple of her girlfriends, they were working. They had to drive from Wyandotte to Willow Run. You know where Willow Run is?
Yeah.
Near Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
There was a big airplane plant there.
So, Pat Mazurik's mother
Dora,
worked in the
plant during the war.
Whoa,
making bombers. Yep. Unbelievable. She did that for a couple of years. Then when the war, diminished, the government, it was a government job, and they didn't have to do that anymore. So then she quit that, then she went, Nona again. Nona went to work for a Saunders ice cream and chocolate factory in Detroit. Because when Grandma and I started dating pretty steady, I remember a couple of times, Pat and I had to take their car and go pick her up at work. Because she worked like, 2 to 8 or something.
Doing what though in the factory?
I don't know what she did. That's come to think of it. I never knew what she did there. I never knew what she did.
I just always had that in my mind, like, oh, women didn't really work, especially.
No, she worked, because then after we got serious, no, we were married then. She wanted to go back to work, and then she got a job at a shoe store in Trenton, and she was the bookkeeper.
So Nona worked a lot then.
She worked a lot to help her husband out. Because
Did they need the money?
Barney was a painter, and his hourly wage wasn't good as my dad. Because my dad was making steel, and he made decent money. Like he would make. I'm just saying, throwing it out, like $200 a week. And Barney, being a painter, make $120 a week. See what I mean?
That's a pretty big difference.
That adds up. But my dad had, again, a lot more responsibility. Because you get an order for steel, you had to roll it when it's hot and thickness and that. My dad, for very little education, was very smart. Very smart. I mean, at math, without education.
He never taught you. So your parents didn't try to teach you?
I didn't get much homework. The only homework I got, I remember my mother was showing me about, writing, S's and
right.
L's.
But they never were like, hey, are you reading? What do you do?
No, nothing like that. No. So anyway, I got that job, and I did that for a year. Then my aunt my mom's sister had worked for a bigger company, a national company that made wallboard, sheetrock wallboard.
Your mom's sister, so your aunt.
My aunt, yeah. Well, she got married and got pregnant, and she was in this accounting job. And she told me, she said, "Hey, Bernie, you got experience. Why don't you try for it? It'll be a raise, you know." So I went over there and introduced myself, and they hired me. So I got a better job, more money. And then all of a sudden, after a year and a half, I got drafted by Uncle Sam.
So you did the accounting.
I still did accounting there too, but a different type.
Right, but so you did accounting right after high school, and then you, after a year and a half, you got drafted.
No, I went to another job after a year and a half to U.S. Gypsum Company.
Okay.
My first job was called Bond, B-O-N-D, Bond International. And they made all these rubber grommets. That's where I started and learned
And then you went to
office. And then I quit there when my aunt recommended me to this job, and they hired me at U.S. Gypsum. And it was still outside of Detroit, but more money, you know, more responsibility, more work. I had to, I run what they call a Frieden calculator, which is passe now. It was a big company back in the 40s, 50s. And my job was to figure cost, efficiency at this one department, wallboard. That's all I did, 8 hours a day. But
so then you got drafted after that second job.
Yeah, when I was doing the second job, you know, I got drafted.
Tell me about that experience. What was do you remember the job?
I was totally depressed. Because when I signed up for the Navy Reserve, when I met Grandma when I was a senior, just before I graduated, I signed up for the Navy Reserve. And I was told that as long as I went, because you had to go to meetings, it was no joke. You had to go once a month, you had to go for a weekend, Friday, Saturday, come home Sunday. Once a month. And if you did that, you wouldn't have to worry about the draft. Well, that was baloney, because when I got the paper to go into the Army, we were drafted. Oh my God, I was just totally depressed. I was dating Pat at the time. She said, "What did you do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to talk to somebody at the naval base and see if I don't want to go in the Army, climb in the mud." You know what I mean?
What was the war?
The war was after the Second World War.
So after the Second World War,
It was Korean War.
It was the Korean War.
Yeah.
So you got drafted for the Korean War.
Right after the Korean War, I got drafted.
Or right after it.
Yeah.
Okay.
They signed the papers, no more war with Korea. But I went to the naval base and told them, I said, I don't want to go in the Army. He says, "Well, if you're going to go in the Navy, you get out of the Army." He said, "The catch is, the Army is only 2 years. But the Navy, if you go into the Navy under the draft, it's 3 years." So I chose the Navy because I was already like seaman. You got like one stripe for seaman first class, second class. You got 3 stripes. And I was already getting a paycheck, from the Navy. Small one, but it was money.
What were your obligations for that?
I was attached to a squadron.
Out of Detroit?
Out of Grosse Ile, Michigan.
Grosse Ile.
Yeah. They had government had a big property right in the water, and they were all the pilots were all military, ex-military guys, nice guys, very, very nice, professional. And they used to fly these planes for readiness. That's part of the reserve, to be ready in case something happens.
Right.
And these guys that were pilots had to fly so much every month to get their check and get their qualifications in. You know what I mean? Like, to be sharp. So since I could type, they assigned me to one of the squadrons.
As keeping track of stuff on paperwork?
Typing.
Yeah.
I kept track of their hours, any kind of a personal paper or any promotion. I did all that.
All right.
3 years, that's it.
So that's when you remember your parents giving you more freedom when you were in high school.
Yeah, when I started in high school, I had more freedom. In the meantime, when I went to high school, I started working as a caddy.
Where'd you work at?
Well, on a golf course, I was a caddy for a couple of years. And that's where that nickname came from, Farmer.
Yeah, tell that.
Yeah, when I worked at the golf course. That one, the sun was hot that year. And I remember my mother said, you gotta wear a hat. You're getting all sunburned. Well, back then there was no sunscreen or SPFs or nothing like that. So she had bought me a straw hat.
To wear out as a kid?
Yeah. And like I listened to my parents, I wore it.
Yeah.
And all the kids said, hey, Bert's got a farmer hat on. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
Straw farmer hat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I picked up that name. It lasted me for
Were you self-conscious about it?
No. I don't
It
know.
was just a nickname, yeah.
I didn't think so. I just called me farmer. You learned to accept it. I don't know. Nobody would call me Bertie. It was always, I got high school. Hey, farmer. Anyway, that's how I got the nickname from being on the golf course wearing a hat. Of course, when I went home, I never wore it again.
Really? Never, ever?
In the field, but not to the golf course. Those crazy days. But, my parents didn't believe in allowances. Once in a while, my mother would give us a quarter or something to buy.
What would you do?
Not often. Well, candy bars back then were a nickel, most of them. Some were a dime, like Mars Bar or Milky Ways were only, that was one of my favorites when I was a kid, Milky Way. And they still make them. Milky Way candy bars. You can buy one for a nickel.
Yeah.
And, they were pretty good. 3.5 inches long, real good. Stuff we never got at home.
Right. So you remember, your parents were kind of they weren't as social either. Do you remember them having a lot of friends or anything?
No. My dad had some friends from work, and then middle 40s, he took up golf. He had some friends there, but
Was it because of was there any relation to the caddy job you said?
no, my caddy job, I knew some guys, but I didn't, hang out with them. After caddy season, in September, the school started. I didn't see a lot of those guys, except one of the guys that was golfing golf course with me, who I talked to quite a bit. I didn't really. I can't remember what his name was. He was a Polish kid, though, from the old intersection. That old Fort City Polak section. I didn't know it at the time we met. But when freshman class started, we got together. He was in my class, and I looked. I can't remember what the hell his name was. But he knew me. He said, hey, farmer. Yeah, it just blew my mind, because nobody else in Mount Carmel at that point knew me as farmer. Just kids at the golf course. Mm-hmm. And this one kid was one of the kids I hung around with at the golf course, talking. And
yeah. Working together.
Working together, yeah. But that's old memories. I can't remember his name.
So he started the nickname.
But he didn't start it. I don't know who started it.
But he brought it to Mount Carmel.
Yeah, he started it in school. He's the one who brought it in. There's a couple of guys said, what did you call them? Farmers. I said, I didn't know his name was, Bernard Olander. I just knew him as Farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Way back. And we got to be good friends. He was in my class for 4 years.
What kind of classes do you remember having in high school? Math, science, English?
No.
Social
I
studies?
remember mostly English, history, religion. Being
right, because
a Catholic school.
Right.
1 hour was spent on religion every day, talking about, what's going on over there, and help. I remember one big thing it was the nuns to raise money for the Africans missions. To see, maybe a priest could convert him into Catholicism.
Mm.
The movie was a dime. If you brought a dime in and went to the movie, what was I thinking of? Well, yeah, you could go to the movie because they'd sit once a month. They would have a movie shown. Some guy would come in with a projector on a big screen in the auditorium gym, and the money supposedly was going to pay him, plus what was left over was going for missions for African missions.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. But then as I got to be a sophomore, we started in algebra. And for the life of me, I just couldn't catch on. And there was like 40, 43 kids in my class. Naturally, the nun who was teaching algebra didn't have time for all of us. And that was one of the downfalls about the Catholic schools.
They were overcrowded?
That they had too many kids to teach you properly. I didn't realize at the time because that's how it was.
Right.
So as I got older and realized, hey, why didn't I catch on to algebra? I didn't get no tutoring. I need some extra help to follow the steps.
Mm-hmm.
You're on your own. So after about a month of just barely getting by, I said, man, this ain't for me. You got to keep up because it was progressive.
Right.
I told them, I said, I'm just not catching on, sister. I'm just not doing it. She says, well, this particular hour, it's either algebra or you could sign up for a typing class, which I did. It was like
so you didn't. So in high school, you didn't have to take classes. Like now, kids have to take math.
I couldn't. Well, I couldn't keep up. So she
was
said,
okay for
rather
you
get a failing mark, try typing. So in typing, I was good at it. I mean, in my prime, I come out of high school, before I even went to the Navy, I could type at home 65 words a minute without a mistake. A lot
That's
of guys,
a cool skill.
It was cool. I type all my letters out and correspondence, and when I went in the Navy.
And did you have any, so you did typing, but what other, you don't remember having to do classes? Like, well, I'm curious now because kids, we push, like, you're going to college.
History, religion, sociology.
You took a sociology class in high school?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there was only about, actually there was, a writing class. I remember that. Spelling. And then we got like in 11th grade, they had like a business class to learn how to write a check and how to keep track of a checkbook.
Mm-hmm.
And accounting, account for your money. I remember doing that.
Do you have a PE class? Was there a gym there?
There was a gym, but we never had any PE. No, not during school. Only time we had football or basketball. They also had baseball, which I wasn't good at, so I never went because it was summertime. I was on a farm. My dad wanted me on the farm. But no, it was after class. I excelled in football. Basketball, so. Never went out for baseball because I knew I just couldn't count my family status. But
what was there?
After I made some close contact with the kids in my class was through
The sports.
football. Yeah, we were close. Hell, we practiced 5-6 days a week. One time we didn't practice Sunday. Then
you practice on Saturdays too?
Yeah. I started driving then. I was 16. My dad taught me how to drive a stick shift. Another cringy moment because him. If I did the strip the gears, because you had to put clutch, brake, gas. Clutch, brake, gas.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you're shifting, you take it out of gear and then go into another gear. Well, if you didn't get it right, it grind a little bit. I said,
you remember that, right?
Oh, hell yeah. There was no automatic shift.
Yeah.
So a couple of years after I got my license, GM come out with a Chevy automatic. It was called, I remember distinctly, it was called Power Glide.
So that
Put
was
one gear in, and you've got 3 shifts on it. It did automatically. That's when the automation came in.
Power Glide.
It was called Power Glide. It was on a Chevy. My dad had a Chevy car.
Was that a big deal? Do you remember?
Oh my God, yeah. I said, oh, I don't have to clutch anything, you know. But, you know, surprisingly, in my senior year, I got a job at the grocery store. And they put me in the produce department, you know. But
So why no caddying anymore? So,
no, I outgrew that. That was only like in the 9th, 10th grade.
oh, they didn't let.
No,
they
I
didn't
just mentally.
Oh,
I didn't want to go anymore because, you know, a lot of guys were fading out, getting other jobs. And I wound up in a grocery store, in a produce department, which I liked, and made a couple of good contacts there. And at one time, I remembered they had to go to the, what they call Eastern Market in Detroit, where all the produce comes in for the stores.
Mhm.
You know, they had like a central warehouse. And my boss, and I still remember him, that as of 10 years ago, we were still friends. He was an Italian kid, barely spoke English. But his dad was a big shot at the store. His name was Vince Concessi. And Vince says to me and a couple other kids, so it was like 4 kids on a ship, you know, putting up beer and hauling lettuce and trimming celery, you know, just
yeah.
stuff. And you know, Vince comes back in the back room. Says, "Hey, you guys drive a stick shift?" Like a dummy, I raised my hand. I said, "I used to drive a stick shift." Well, he had a small, what they call a stake, S-T-A-K-E, stake truck. You know, with wood boards on the side with a platform. He said, "I want you to go down to the Eastern Market," and I cringed, you know. He said, "Pick up a load at dock," I can't remember, docks 9 or 10, because he had like docks,
Right.
you know, like trucks.
Yeah.
You see, you go in there, and of course the truck said the name of the store. It was called Jack Cinnamon's Supermarket back then. It's one of the first big supermarkets in Michigan. Is one we had down there in Wyandotte, near Cibula's house. It was only a block away, because like I said, they were right on the western border. But I made it. I got in that truck, and I remember the gears, you know, clutch, brake, gas. And I took my time, you know, I didn't speed or anything.
How far was the drive from Wyandotte, where you were
It
at?
was Wyandotte all the way to the west side of Detroit.
And were there not big
Off of
highways?
4th Street. No, there was
Yeah.
just a 4th Street bridge. And that's what it was. 4th Street was the main road that connected Toledo, Ohio, and Detroit. It's called F-O-R-T, Fort. I don't know why, but that's what the name of it was.
Yeah.
So you just said, you know, go down 4th Street, down to the depot, and, you know, ask somebody there on the docks, you know, where number 10 dock is, and pull in there. They're expecting
They'll
you.
load you up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I made it,
Cool.
you know. So I come back and he gave me a raise, dime a raise. Yeah.
That's a cool memory.
Yeah, and I never forgot the guy. Him and I got along well. Vince Concessi. He was from Italy too. I mean, he was born in Italy. Really Italian.
So you were kind of close when you were working there with them.
Yeah, that was my senior year. I worked there after school, and then when I graduated, that senior year of mine is when I met my future wife, who I didn't know at the time. You know, guys are talking about dating. I had broken up with a girl before that. When I was a junior, I went with a girl from the Irish school, St. Patrick's.
Do you remember her name?
Oh yeah, I still remember her. Her name was Joanne Kane, K-A-N-E. I dated her for about 10 months, you know.
Did she ever meet your parents? You ever meet her family?
Oh yeah, I met her family. She never met mine, but because I lived out in the country and she didn't drive. But I drove.
Oh, right. That's right. Like women, it was not as common, right?
No,
for
not
women,
as common, no. Very few drove at that time in the 50s. This
Yeah.
was early 50s. And we broke up probably, I don't know, I think in the spring. And I wasn't dating anybody else. And this was like in May. I remember May, it had to be 1953. Every spring, the nuns would have a stage show. You know, they'd do the direction, but all the kids were, you know, participants. And I was practicing, I remember, with another girl. I can't remember the song. Beautiful Dreamer, I remember that. And there was like 6 couples, I was one of them, as a senior, dancing with the girl, you know, dressed up like a, supposed to be like a military ball, what it was, you know, the theme. And I remember the song to this day. It was called Beautiful Dreamer, Wake Unto Me. I mean, just a pretty song. And it's still around. You don't hear it anymore, but it was a beautiful song. And after we got off the stage, another group of people would come up. Well, Pat was in that other group. She was a dancer at the time, doing some kind of a number. And I don't know, she told me later, she says, her girlfriend said, hey, look at those good looking guys. I wonder if, you know, we could go out with one of them. It was like me and a couple of my buddies. And out of the 3, I saw Grandma and I was attracted to her. I said, gee, she's kind of cute. And I don't know how I found out her name, you know, Patricia Mazurek. And I went over and introduced myself to her. You know, I was bashful. And I said, hey, would you mind if I walked you home? She said, no, I wouldn't mind that.
She lived close to where you were at?
No, hell no. She was, she was almost a mile from school. I met her at the back door. I said, hey, can I carry your books back? She says, yeah. So we just talked, you know, where do you live, what do you do?
Yeah.
You know, just kid talk. But I just had an attraction to her. And then when...
That was your junior or senior year?
No, that was my senior year.
Senior.
I was graduating in June. I met her in May. Then after I graduated, I had her phone number. She gave me her phone number, and I called her up.
And she was a junior? She
No,
was a
she was a
sophomore
sophomore.
when you were a senior?
Yeah, she was 2 years behind me. Yeah.
So then you graduated.
I was graduating.
And you lived at home after you graduated?
Yeah, I never left home.
What were you doing right after that graduation?
I got a job in an office because I thought I wanted to be an accountant.
Oh, you got a job right away?
Yeah, I had no trouble getting a job.
Really?
No. Back then, no, there was all kind of office jobs for boys. You know, and I wanted my own money, and I worked, and I used to give my mom, I think it was every 2 weeks, I think I give her like $15 out of my pay, you know.
Just for rent and...
Well, they were doing my ironing, and she bought the groceries. I didn't have to worry about nothing. I mean, you know, I graduated and nothing stopped. It's the same thing.
So you kept working on the farm too,
Not so much back then, because what had happened in between, like I told you, when I was in my 8th grade, my grandpa Tsabula, who was head of the farm, he passed away with a heart attack. And, you know, he had like 6 cows and, you know, a dozen pigs, and he would grow them from small. Back then, auction sales were big. You know, I remember in Monroe there, we'd go to an auction sale, there's 2 of them. And you could bid on, you know, cattle and chickens.
So who was this guy again, sorry?
My grandpa Tsabula.
Grandpa Sabula.
Yeah, the one I knew
had livestock
well.
and auctioned
He
them.
did, yeah. Yeah, because his wife, my grandma, Barbara Tsabula from Warsaw, she grew up on a farm. Something like Bernie O was telling me that his parents, to this day, his relatives still run a big farm in Poland. You know, there's poor people. He said peasants. He said we were Polanders were peasants in Poland back in the 1800s,